Hello and welcome. I want to talk about technical writing. Now, technical writing is writing which deals with the functions in a particular field or industry or area of specialization. There are many types of documents that can be classified as technical. For example, you have how-to guides, tutorials, reference documents, troubleshooting documents, and internal process documents within an organization. For how-to guides, these include documents such as installation guides, DIY guides, user manuals, configuration guides, among others. For tutorials, you will have documents such as data analysis tutorials, coding tutorials, and even interactive learning labs tutorials. For reference documents, you will have product specification guides, reference guides, or glossaries, among other important types of documents in this category. For troubleshooting documents, you have the frequently asked questions, diagnostic flowcharts, error message explanations. Those are troubleshooting documents. You also have important documents which organizations rely on for their function, such as policy manuals in the form of HR documents, compliance documents, and safety documents. You may also have onboarding documents which are responsible for new employee training. In this category, you can also include workflow diagrams. Now, having established that background of what technical writing is, I want to discuss three types of technical documents. That is, descriptions of mechanisms, descriptions of processes, and writing a set of instructions. In industry, most technical departments find themselves having to write documents that explain certain products and how these products work. So a mechanism description can be organized in the following way. In the introduction of the mechanism description, you're going to have the definition of what the mechanism is. You're going to state the purpose or the function of that particular mechanism. And you're also going to talk about the parts which make up that mechanism. And these are important introductory elements to include because they give the reader the background that they need to understand the complexities of that particular mechanism. Having established that introductory stage, you now go on to provide the visual or the image or the diagram of that particular mechanism. Remember that technical writing thrives on graphics or images or visuals. Without visuals, it is very difficult for readers to imagine what a particular product or object looks like. So providing a visual in your mechanism description helps the reader to understand what it looks like. So you're going to include this labeled visual so that the reader can see the parts and how they sit according to what you indicated in the introduction. Once the visual is provided, you will proceed now to do the part-by-part description. The part-by-part description is where you focus on the specific parts which make up this mechanism. So you're going to describe these parts one by one. So for example, you start with part A. You define the part. You are going to explain the function or the purpose of the part. You're also going to explain the appearance of the part. In some cases, you may need to include a visual of this part so that the reader can understand. When you have done that, you can now proceed to talk about the material that is used to make this part, the finish that is used to make this part. You can also talk about the size and the dimensions of this particular part. The idea is to help the reader understand how that particular part works or how it looks like as it sits in the mechanism. So you have to repeat this process for all the other parts of the mechanism that you are going to describe in your writing. In your conclusion or towards the end of your description, you're going to tell the reader how the parts come together to perform a function. You're going to tell the reader how the mechanism works, how the mechanism operates. That is where you focus on how the parts that you have described work together to perform that particular function for which the mechanism is meant. In a nutshell, that is what a mechanism description looks like. You can just click on the first comment so that you can get an idea of what I am talking about. Another type of technical description is called a process description. A process, by definition, is a series of actions or events which occur in a particular chronological order. So you may have action number 1 followed by action number 2 followed by action number 3 in that particular order. Now, there are certain questions that you need to answer in a process description. For example, what is the process? You have to define the process. Who or what performs the process? When and where does the process happen or occur? Under what conditions does this process occur? You also have to state the functions, the purpose of this particular process. So that is the introductory part of a process description. Those questions need to be answered. In the body of your process description, you are going to now talk about the steps of the process in the way in which they occur. These steps will be numbered depending on who your audience is, or you can write these steps in a narrative descriptive form. It's important at this stage to remember that a process description shows how something happens or how something is done. So in most cases, processes are written in the passive voice because they are showing how something happened or how something was done. So that is an important aspect of style in writing process descriptions that every writer should be aware of. When you have written the numbered steps in your process and you have included all the relevant details, you may now move on to the conclusion. Before you go to the conclusion, there are certain steps that may be complex and may involve the use of objects or certain equipment. In which case, in that step, you may want to describe that equipment and the mechanism that helps the step to get done. So you will have to resort to a mechanism description in that particular step to show the reader which parts of that mechanism are responsible for getting the job done. Depending on how complex the process is, you may need to include a mechanism description to make the reader understand completely. In the conclusion of your process description, you may want to restate the steps for emphasis, or you may want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of conducting that particular process. I want to add a third type of description, which is similar to a process but not exactly. Here we talk about instructions. Instructions tell the reader how to do something. So they show the reader how to do something. That means that steps in a set of instructions should be written in the active voice. The active voice is where you are giving commands or you are using the imperative to tell the reader what they need to do to get the job done. So just like in a process description and in a mechanism description, a set of instructions will have a title. For example, how to brush your teeth or how to calibrate X. Once the title is in place, you also need to provide a visual. When the visual has been provided, you may now want to talk about the materials and the equipment that is required. This is key because the reader needs to know what tools they need at their disposal to complete that particular set of instructions. And once the tools are in place, you can now go to the actual description of the steps or the actual listing of the steps. When you're writing instructions, you use the command voice or the imperative or the active voice. This means the words that you choose must show the action that the reader needs to perform. For example, push the button, lift the lid. Those are action words because they tell the reader what to do. In instructions, you also need to include hazards such as warnings, cautions, precautions, and even notes. These help the reader to be careful as they follow through the steps that they need to complete. If in step 4, in a set of instructions, there's a warning that you want to include there, in case the reader will be handling something that is hot, you will have to put a warning there to alert the reader so that they are aware and they prepare adequately and they don't end up in a dangerous situation. So warnings and hazards are important aspects of instructions. When you have written the steps of the instructions and you have carefully gone through them, you have edited the steps to make sure that they are in order, now you can move towards the conclusion. Remember, your steps should be numbered and formatted in such a way that if there are sub steps, the numbering should indicate which step should be performed first, which one follows, and so on. So you have to follow a structured numbering system for your steps so that the reader does not get confused in the process. In the conclusion, remind the reader of the important steps or the advantages and disadvantages of carrying out that particular series of actions to get a particular job done.